Joining us live now is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman Mace, we thank you so much for joining our special broadcast tonight. You are running in a competitive primary for governor there in your home state of South Carolina. President Trump has not endorsed you in the race yet. Do you think you will get his endorsement?
Who knows at this point? It is a tight primary. We're working very hard to win it, and it'll be up to him and his decision whether or not he endorses me or anyone else in the race. But we're ahead in every poll, and we're very excited about the opportunity and honored to serve South Carolina now in Congress and as governor in this election.
Do you think you've earned it? Do you think you're going to get it?
Who knows? I mean, he's his own man. He makes his own decisions, and we're plowing ahead. We're ahead in every single poll. I'm the only candidate running for governor that has a plan, for example, to reduce the state income tax down to zero. That's very important when it comes to affordability and cost of living to South Carolina voters. I've been very clear on the justice system. It's not just the Epstein cases, for example, showing a broken justice system, but that trickles down to state cases. So I've been very active in putting forth policies to protect every South Carolinian in the governor's race.
Yeah, you mentioned the Epstein files. There will be some victims, some survivors, I should say, of Jeffrey Epstein in attendance. I think they're coming with Representative Ro Khanna. What do you think the president should say to them? Should he address them?
Well, I think their presence here tonight is courageous. It's brave. It's vindicating. Also tonight, I'm wearing a butterfly on my lapel. Virginia Giuffre, Robert's brother, came by my office yesterday and gave me his butterfly pin that you see almost every single victim wearing as they're advocating for their rights and advocating for their justice and their truth. And this thing should not end with Epstein until people go to jail.
Why do you think there's less accountability here in the United States where Jeffrey Epstein lived and committed these crimes than in the UK and other places abroad?
I think it's our culture of American society where we sweep these things under the rug. We just saw this week Tony Gonzales and those awful transgressions between him and a young woman that worked for him who committed suicide ultimately at the end of that relationship. I called for his resignation too. And, you know, we just sweep everything under the rug. And both sides, at least the political parties, cover for one another. And also, that's just the way that it is, which is why I say there's a two-tiered system of justice in America. There's one for the rich and powerful, and then there's one for everybody else. And it's not fair, and the system needs to be fixed. And I'm glad to see the UK taking the task to former Prince Andrew and Lord Mandelson, holding them accountable for potentially their crimes. We need to do the same here in the U.S. This thing should not end until people go to prison.
Let's talk about your colleague, Representative Gonzales, there from Texas, a border state, a very important district. Are you satisfied with the amount of Republicans that have come out and spoken against Representative Gonzales, asking him to resign?
You know, there could always be more, but I'm talking to a lot of my colleagues behind the scenes because late last night I filed a resolution that would expose all of the sexual harassment records of every single member of Congress, regardless of party affiliation, because of the Tony Gonzales situation. I did call for his resignation. Others have done the same. And I'm going to put that on the floor, that resolution as privileged on the 4th, and I'll force a vote in the House of Representatives to show people what they're made of. Let's show America that we can hold people accountable, and we'll see how they vote.
How frustrated are you with House Speaker Johnson and how he's handled the situation with Congressman Gonzales?
Well, I love Speaker Mike Johnson. I think he's a great human being, and I understand due process and all of that. But at some point, people have to be accountable. And we have known, everyone on the Hill has known this has been going on for months now, and why no action has been taken. And I can say the same thing about any other number of colleagues, right or left. But that's why I say both parties protect each other, because what ends up happening, which will end up happening with my resolution next week, it'll just get referred to the Ethics Committee where it goes to die, and nothing ever happens. And both sides protect one another, and it's very frustrating. And if we can't be an example in Congress, how can we be example for the rest of the country? Because normal human beings in America get fired for that kind of behavior in their jobs.
President Trump is the unofficial leader of the Republican Party. Maybe he is the official leader. In his eyes, Speaker Johnson is the leader of the Republicans in the House. If you had them both in a room tonight, what would you tell them about Tony Gonzales?
That they should force his resignation. They should take away their endorsements of him if they have endorsed him, and endorse Brandon Herrera, and get a candidate in there that will be that will have the moral clarity and ethics to help lead that district. I think it's really disingenuous that he came out of the Speaker's office today defiant, saying he wasn't going to resign and there was more to the story. No one needs to know any more to the story than those text messages, and he needs to be fired.
What should the president tell voters What do the voters of South Carolina want to hear about the economy from the president tonight?
The voters in South Carolina are concerned about the cost of living and affordability. I think it would be very important for the president to talk about wage growth last year, over 1% wage growth, economic growth. On average, she had over 3% GDP growth in the economy. 2 quarters last year were over 4%. Those are all good things for American workers, the middle class. Obviously, reducing our taxes, child care tax credit, all of those things are very important for hardworking Americans. Also, communities and keeping them safer, law and order, deporting the worst of the worst illegal immigrants, the rapists, the murderers, the pedophiles. Those are all success stories in his first year of his second term in office.
Why, if there are so many success stories, at least with the economy, in your opinion, why are the polls still so bad for President Trump? Why is he underwater with the economy? How would you explain that to him? Because I interviewed him. I told him the polls aren't in his favor in the economy. He just dismisses the polls, but it's quite literally every poll that's out there.
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy. I've seen some pretty gnarly polls in my own race, and I know what the data says and doesn't say, and I empathize with that. But I think as long as he continues to focus on the economy and messages it in the right way, he'll have a very successful second year, as successful as the first.
Yeah, Congresswoman Mace, but what does that mean, right? Because price of beef is still expensive. Price of heating your home, if you have natural gas, coffee's still expensive. Other prices have come down. Eggs have come down. Gas has come down. Get that. But voters are telling us it still feels very expensive to live in America.
Well, it is. I mean, the cost of living is very high, even in the state of South Carolina, because of all the growth we've had. We're the fastest growing state in the country. I will tell you right now, I think there are other, things at play, particularly with the energy market, for example. Data centers are eating up a lot more energy today than they were even 5 years ago. And who pays that bill? Often, depending on it state by state, it might be the consumer. I think there are states like Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia that are looking at how do we make sure we don't saddle those prices with just consumers only. How do data centers pay their fair share, for example? These are all things that people that are governor or running for governor need to address with voters, because the cost of energy is skyrocketing right now in every state across the country. But I think there are other issues at play as well that we have to consider.
Yeah. How do you explain to your voters back in South Carolina what we're trying to do in Iran? The president says we decimated the nuclear program months ago in Iran. So why is there a military buildup? And why are we threatening war with Iran right now? How do you explain that to voters in South Carolina?
Well, number one, if anyone can bring peace to the Middle East, I believe it's President Trump. He's been very good at negotiating deals with foreign nations, but there is no peace in the Middle East if Iran has a nuclear warhead. So I'm hoping and praying that the negotiations happening right now with the Iranian regime will not escalate to a war. And if that happens, of course, Congress has the war powers, and Congress has to approve any war that we might have with another country. But if we're talking about surgically going in, whether it was like Soleimani or Maduro, for example, getting in and out, having no troops on the ground, or getting out very quickly, that's very different. A strike is different from going to war. And I believe the president's heart is in the right place, and I hope that he can bring peace, and we'll see how the negotiations end.
Does it worry you that America First has sort of morphed in less than 2 years to include other countries? Some of them, yes, are neighboring countries, but even countries like Iran, which are across oceans?
Well, look at how many people, 50 to 100,000 innocent protesters have been murdered and executed in the streets of Iran right now. The Iranian people want a non-nuclear democratic country of Iran, and they're fighting as hard as they can. But there are some grave concerns about the nuclear capabilities of Iran in the Middle East. And if they get a weapon, our allies in the Middle East, they don't want to speak on the record, but I know in backroom conversations, they are deeply concerned, because if Middle Eastern countries are prosperous, there will be no war. And so how do we make that happen in the Middle East? And I do believe that President Trump is the only person who can get that deal done, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of days. And I pray that there's no war, but I also pray for the people of Iran that they can find peace and they can find their freedom sooner rather than later.
Congresswoman Mace, we thank you for your time. We thank you for talking to us tonight here on Top Story. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.